the Harris Football Podcast with your host, Christopher Harris.
Welcome. Welcome in. Hey, I am Chris Harris. This is the Harris Football Podcast. You know what day it is. I'm recording on a Thursday, and that means there's Thursday Night Football, and that means an hour before kickoff, I'll be taking your questions live via streaming video. Pretty fun stuff. I also do trivia questions, and if you win trivia, you get a prize. And because I'm highly organized, that prize is negotiable. I mention this because a couple recent trivia winners chose to have a Skype session with me and talk about fantasy football and, life, man. And I had a couple of those sessions yesterday. It was a pleasure. Eric Saar, we had a really fun talk. And Rich Player, it turns out Rich is in a La Liga Lebowski clone league I wasn't even aware of. So a shout out to La Liga Clone 42. Rich and I commiserated about the 3 days Clone 42 took to draft, and I apologized in absentia profusely to his girlfriend. But anyway, that's me, apologizing to girlfriends, usually my own, sometimes other people's.
Today's kickoff.
On today's show, I'll scan the news wires for some alterations to my Week 4 ranks. I'll have a preview of tonight's Ravens-Steelers game. It's Thursday, so of course it'll be time to help you all out with a nice long session of Flexual healing. We have another song parody, and then Craig Clark will be aboard to talk about DFS for Week 4. Today's show is brought to you by BetDSI.com, which is the sportsbook where I personally play. So it's convenient that they've been aboard now for a while as a sponsor. BetDSI is one of the original online sportsbooks. Has a great reputation for paying your winnings. They get an A+ on many sportsbook reviews, and they help set the lines for all sporting events. For Thursday night's game, they've got an 0-3 team, the Ravens, as a 3-point road favorite, which tells you all you really need to know about what the Sharps think of Michael Vick. BetDSI is legit, the website is simple, and it's really fun to play. So head on over to BetDSI.com right now, and when you start an account, use the offer code Harris10. If you do, within a couple of hours, they'll put $10 to play with into your account for free. That's BetDSI.com, offer code Harris, no space, the number 10. And as I regularly mention, I play at BetDSI in relatively small amounts, recreationally and in moderation. But if you have trouble with moderation in this area, please check out gamblersanonymous.org for help.
Injury news.
As I said on Wednesday's show, there are so many injury guys. I'll spend the rest of the week reading tea leaves and trying to adjust ranks. Obviously, nothing is set in stone until the inactives come out on game day, and even then, nothing is really set in stone. Right, Chris Ivory? But I checked out the practice reports from Wednesday and did make some adjustments. Adjustments which I may undo, depending on what happens later in the week or over the weekend. Optimistically, I tried to rank Victor Cruz for Week 4, then he went out on the practice field and his calf popped again, and he's out of the ranks. At this point, I'm finding it difficult to justify anyone owning him in a 12-team league, and I'm not shocked. If you listened to the little podcast that could throughout August, you probably got tired of me registering my doubt about Cruz's return. And in fact, when I did a top 5 busts list for 2015, I disqualified Cruz because people were so sick of me talking about him. I think you already knew I thought he shouldn't be drafted at all. This guy is just coming back from a brutal injury. I'm suspicious he doesn't contribute at all this year. I also took out Julius Thomas, who sounds unlikely to play in a return from his broken hand, at least not just yet. He's week to week. I got a little less optimistic on a couple of guys. It sounded as though Andre Ellington and Chris Ivory were out there for practice, and they both have a chance to play Sunday. And remember, Ivory and the Jets play a very early game in London on Sunday morning. But the fact that, each of those guys is still hobbling around. Makes me feel like their ceilings are lower than I originally anticipated because their backups, Chris Johnson and Bilal Powell, have had some, recent success. Johnson quite good in week 3, and those guys are probably going to be parts of the game plan even if the starters are back. Sounds like Reggie Bush has a chance to come back and play, and I did add him into the nether regions of my PPR running back list. Though maybe this is more notable for the possibility it has of taking Carlos Hyde out of action if and when the score gets out of control against the Packers this week. Drew Brees and Arian Foster could play. Still got him ranked. We'll see if he can get more clarity in the next day or two. You know that feeling you get when you can get things done with just the click of your mouse? Can't get more convenient than that, and now you can even get your mailing and shipping done without leaving your desk, thanks to Stamps.com. Stamps.com turns your PC or Mac into your own personal post office that never closes. You can buy and print official U.S. postage for any letter or package using your computer and printer, and then just hand your mail to the mailman or drop it in a mailbox, and you'll never have to go to the post office again. I use Stamps.com for all our little podcast that could mailing needs, including the swag we're literally sending out today. Right now, sign up for Stamps.com and use my offer code Harris for this special offer, a 4-week trial plus $110 bonus offer, including postage and a free digital scale. Don't wait. Go to Stamps.com, and before you do anything else, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage and type in Harris. That's Stamps.com. Enter Harris.
Thursday night preview.
Well, tonight we find out whether Michael Vick's dilapidated 35-year-old legs and scattershot arm are enough to completely derail Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. I'm just a caveman. But even I know Brown's streak of 35 games with at least 50 yards receiving could be in jeopardy with Vick scrambling around and just begging to turn the ball over, which of course doesn't mean in fantasy you even think of benching Brown or Bell. But yeah, I don't have a lot of faith in Vick. Since looking completely disorganized opening night against the Patriots, the Steelers' defense has been better and will present a challenge to Justin Forsett. This Ravens offensive line personnel is good. We've seen it be really good in the very recent past, but something seems to go wrong an awful lot so far this year when they're run blocking. That feeling of there always being a really nice crease just when Justin Forsett needs it, yeah, that's not been there. It's 3 games. It doesn't mean it can't be there going forward. I have lowered Forsett to 19th among running backs, but that still makes him, a start in a lot of situations. Watch him closely tonight and see if you can find holes he's missing or cutbacks he should or shouldn't be making. I haven't seen him as the major problem. Though, of course, he has physical limitations and isn't going to bust through many tackles against defensive linemen or linebackers. Steve Smith, what else do you need to say? The dude is 3rd in the NFL in targets, almost out of necessity. I'm skeptical he's going to hold up over the full course of the year at this usage level, but probably can't bench him now. Probably don't even want to feel like you have to trade him now. He's certainly going to be a major topic of Flexual healing in a moment here. And the Ravens defense could be an interesting surprise fantasy start tonight with Vick in there. They have struggled terribly in the secondary. Jimmy Smith just got roasted by A.J. Green last week. But I question whether or not Vick can hurt them. Interesting thing. The Michael Vick character making the rounds around the league. A lot of the story of the Steelers season is going to get written in that game Thursday night.
Get up, get up, get up. Start your day tonight. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Harris says it's right. When my team's been reeling, I want Flexual healing. Flexual healing.
That's right. It's time to talk flex. I ask you for your flex questions on social media, and then you hit me up. We compile all the players you all ask about and find time to talk about the most common ones. The idea here is to help you figure out the mesh points. If you're comparing a particular receiver to the running back ranks, where's the crossover? That's my goal here. I'm certainly glad to help the individuals whose questions I address in the segment, but the larger goal is to talk about these players' situations and try to put you in the neighborhood of where I'd start position A and where I'd start position B. So this segment can be useful for hundreds of people rather than just the one person I mentioned. So let's get to it. The number one player we were asked about this week was, in fact, Steve Smith. But by and large, his neighborhood is getting way classier. Amit asks, Smith Sr. or Mark Ingram? Tommy Z emails, Mark Ingram or Steve Smith? Same question, just reversed. Ryan Castillo, better flex in a point per reception, Carlos Hyde or Steve Smith? Eric says Jeremy Hill or Steve Smith? Greg Meal throws in a complicating factor, Arian Foster or Steve Smith? Well, as I mentioned earlier, Smitty currently third in the NFL in targets, behind only Julio Jones and Julian Edelman. And with Smith, it's almost like a running back who doesn't have a lot of depth chart competition. The Ravens can't find another receiver who can get open, so Smith just gets targeted relentlessly. If you play zone against him, forget it. He's just a great zone beater. If you play man, you give help, obviously, because nobody else is probably going to get beat. And that's the question tonight with the Steelers. Can they coordinate the defense well enough to get nickel or safety help Smith's way? And, if Forset's working on the ground, can they afford to have nickel or dime personnel on the field that helps stop Smith? Bottom line, I have Smith 9th among receivers and will be on board until and if he starts to drop off. And that means in most flex questions, Smith is winning. Hill, for me, isn't even a question at that level, and really Hyde too. Ingram, now we're talking after just having seen Devontae Freeman rip up the Cowboys. That's the right neighborhood where it starts to become a gut call. My gut tells me Smith there, but if your gut is barking something else, all good. And Foster's in that same neighborhood, but you have that added complication of Smith playing Thursday night and Foster being uncertain to play. We're not going to know anything for sure by Thursday night for Foster, so you have to go Smith. The next most asked about player was Karlos Williams, who it seems pretty clear will get the start for the Bills against the Giants, though Anthony Dixon will no doubt get some run as well. And then your questions, Karlos is running with the big boys. Norman Morales asks Karlos or Megatron. Thank you, brother, he says. Christopher Short, Karlos Williams or Jordan Matthews. Andrew Crow, Karlos Williams or Golden Tate in a PPR. Ryan, also a PPR, Karlos Williams or Leonard Hankerson. And then Adam asks if Shady is in, if Shady plays, Karlos Williams or Keenan Allen. Now, I don't think Karlos Williams is a great player yet. I think, the fantasy hoi polloi they're really into him, but it's mostly because they look at that touchdown line and they see a touchdown every game. But, if you've been listening along with the podcast, there was a little bit of fluke involved in that. You may remember Matt Waldman coming on in August and talking about Williams as a pretty raw prospect who floundered at times with mental mistakes in college. And it's a lot to ask a kid to come in and take over a whole workload in an NFL game. I certainly don't think much of Anthony Dixon as a runner, so I'm going to give Karlos the workload benefit of the doubt this week. And he's in my top 10 running back, so, we're not comparing him to Hankerson or Tate. He gets the nod over that neighborhood for sure. But then we'll start talking Megatron versus Seattle, and even Jordan Matthews. I mean, Megatron, I'm really going to, but I think that's right. I think that's about right. That's where the crossover is, where you'd want to listen to your gut. I'm fine with going Karlos there, but I'm also fine picking the receivers. Megatron, tough guy to ever sell short, but he certainly hasn't been mega productive yet. Maybe if it were me, I'd go Karlos in all these cases, but again, trust your gut. We're happy to be sponsored today by DraftKings. folks at DraftKings are really, really supportive of the little podcast that could, and we're very appreciative. They're a company that's fun and creative and really interested in helping folks enjoy their NFL weekends. And they believe in their product so much that they'll give you an entry for free to try it out. I play every weekend, but you don't have to make that kind of commitment. Play whenever you feel like it and choose a new group of players every time you play. No more season-ending injuries getting in the way of your fantasy football enjoyment, and you're never committed to a player who's a bust for more than 1 week. DraftKings has contests where you can try to become a millionaire, and also fun contests where you're playing against a smaller group for lower stakes, and your chances of winning go up. As I say, they'll let you try playing for free when you go to DraftKings.com and use my promo code Harris. So go there now, DraftKings.com, promo code Harris, and have fun. John Brown got a lot of Flexual healing questions as his owners begin to get fidgety about the lack of stats. Big Screen asks, Abdullah or John Brown in the flex? Dan Brandow says Smokey Brown or Ellington. Robert Cumans asks PPR. Frank Gore or John Brown. Jeffrey Lamar. Miller or John Brown, meaning Lamar Miller. Phil Varmuza says, love the little podcast that could and your analysis. I have a Flexual healing conundrum eye roll between TJ Yeldon and John Brown. Thanks. Well, establishing a boom or bust player's flex neighborhood is tough. Abilities-wise, Brown, he's boom or bust. He's still a good T.Y. Hilton analog, but Hilton has been a bigger part of the Colts attack so far, as Larry Fitzgerald has morphed into a flanker non-Perel.
Eye roll.
There we go, the actual eye roll. Yeah, I mean, I never want to say, oh, you're dumb if you don't start Brown. Because it's the same thing with, like, Deshaun Jackson when he's healthy. You know what these guys provide. They give you the possibility of winning a week with big plays, but they can also disappoint, and you know they're gonna sometimes. To some extent, it depends on what your team needs in a given week. But I can say, of the guys that you all just asked about, Lamar Miller, Amir Abdullah versus Seattle, Andre Ellington with unknown health workload. If it's me, I probably just say, John Brown lives in a better neighborhood right now. I'll just take the chance on the upside. Gore, for me, that's probably too high. I think I'm picking Gore no matter what format. Yeldon, for me, is where it starts to get interesting. Yeldon versus Smokey Brown. I think I probably pick Yeldon, but I do think that's probably about where Smokey lives right now. James Jones is starting to get some love, with Devontae Adams unlikely to play because of his sprained ankle. Jones backed up his TD scoring ways Monday night with a lot of garbage time yards. Here were your James Jones flex questions. Paul Basham asks Abdullah or James Jones. Ryan Kelly, James Jones or Todd Gurley. Aaron Wilson says, when I get that feeling, I need to know James Jones or Frank Gore. And Brian Nix says, in a PPR, I got a bunch of choices. James Jones or Devontae Freeman, Carlos Hyde, Melvin Gordon. Well, it feels like the first three of those questions that we picked out as the James Jones representatives, pretty easy. Abdullah and Gurley, I think, would be no way compared to Jones. And Gore, again, would be a definitive yes. Then there's this other list of dudes that Brian had. Devontae Freeman, Carlos Hyde, Melvin Gordon. A look at my list of PPR running backs for Week 4 will tell you that my order, they go Gordon, Freeman, Hyde. And, that's a pretty good neighborhood for a James Jones on steroids that could happen if he's really Green Bay's number one outside receiver. Not that he's literally on steroids, but you know what I mean. His production could be. There's some Ty Montgomery risk there. There is. Plus risk that it's all Randall Cobb and Eddie Lacy. If it's me, I think I take Gordon against the Browns, but maybe I do James Jones over Freeman and Hyde. But, that's the neighborhood. If you're a Jones owner and want to check out my ranks on harrisfootball.com, that's the neighborhood where I'd be looking. One more guy to dig deep on, as a bunch of people asked about, Brandon Cooks. Primetime asks Doug Martin or Brandon Cooks. Mike Cook asks Justin Forsett or Brandon Cooks as a PPR flex. Peter Caldis, Gio Bernard or Brandon Cooks. And Kyle Samanowitz, Ivory or Cooks. Hashtag Flexual Healing, hashtag It's Good For Me. In the case of Forsett, obviously that's a decision anyone will have to make pretty much right away, and I think that neighborhood's maybe a little pricey for Cooks in a PPR. Regular listeners know that I've been skeptical about Forsett all summer. He was also on my no-fly zone for busts in August because I'd talked about him stinking this year so much. But I kind of like this spot for him on Thursday. And the reason Cooks is such a popular topic of conversation here is, he was an okay possession receiver for Luke McCown last week, but it feels like he really needs Drew Brees if he's going to be a downfield guy. We can't really be sure yet whether we're getting Drew Brees. I think I go Martin over Cooks. I think I go Cooks over Ivory, feeling really burned by last week. As for Gio Bernard, I think that's the crossover for me. That's the neighborhood. There are real questions about workload in both cases, real questions about upside in both cases. I think that's where you should let your tummy be your guide.
Harris's music digression.
This is a quick one. A submission from Timothy White, who does a little a cappella number, a version of a classic old Traffic song. Is Timothy a great singer? I think he would be the first to admit he is not, but he's game, and that's what matters. We appreciate his submission just as much as anyone else's. And we play it by way of saying we obviously have some mega-talented listeners, but there's a place for you, even if you're not mega-talented, especially if you can write clever and funny lyrics.
Dear Mr. Fantasy, play us a podcast. Say something to make us all happy. Please don't be sad if Joey Bell is bad. The Lions have been just no good for years.
See? Now that's great advice for life. This is my new motto. Please don't be sad if Joik Bell is bad.
Today's guest.
And today's guest is our DFS expert, Craig Clark. You can follow him on Twitter at PCClark59. Craig, another week, another win for me over you in the Harris Football Fans Contest. This must be quite irritating to you.
I think that's just a rumor. I don't remember it this way.
That's 2 in a row, my friend.
Innuendo.
So that's basically your mellow way of saying that you're irritated.
I am slightly irritated. The points left me behind this week. My FanDuel ticket did well, but other than that, especially the Monday night game, I was watching a whole bunch of tickets in the black go in the red. I was like, oh, stop.
Yeah. All right, well, so, having established myself as the current reigning unbelievable champion of our two-person conversation, I will nevertheless defer to your judgment because neither of us believes that that's true at all, that this is about the vagaries of fate, and I'm sure things will even out.
And Steve Smith.
Steve, but I picked him, didn't I?
Yep. I was against that pick, and I was quite wrong.
You were, 49 points later on DraftKings. All right, so last week we talked about stacking, and I expressed a little bit of reservations about the notion of stacking kind of because it worked the previous week, whatever. And, of course, right. Neither one of us is right. That's not even an argument, right? Yeah. Stacking works if you pick the right guys. Anything works if you pick the right guys. But, I think my point, I just am interested in you weighing in on this point, which is it's still really tough to predict which teams will do ungodly well across several positions. It still feels, to me, pretty random. Stacking Seahawks last week against the Bears felt like the right thing to do, and we saw how that went.
Yeah. Right, some teams do. Every week there will be some teams that are successful. The Falcons would have been a great choice, for example. But, again, you're right. Say you eliminate the worst 15 or worst 12 teams, then it might be a shot in the dark. 1 out of 20, 1 out of 15 chance of getting the right stack.
Yeah, and the point would be that, does that really increase your odds any more than simply trying to pick individual players from individual teams? I haven't seen any math that's convinced me that if I did 15, 20 tickets for a GPP and, stacked across all the NFL, the possible usual suspect type NFL teams, does the math work out that it would do better than if I just kind of assembled a bunch of teams with what I think of as being star players in good matchups?
I don't hate that idea, but you got to get your other players right.
Yeah.
So you really have to hit both your stack and your other players. So if you 3 or 4 other players that have to go with it, that's your risk.
Well, this is the point. The GPP is just it's a lottery. It is a lottery ticket. I just am not all that convinced that it's not random. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just, obviously to win the $2 million. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about how many spots in a typical GPP, the Millionaire Maker, cash out extremely well. I mean, a bunch, right?
Well, to $1,000, it started out at the top 400,
and
I think it's now 300.
Right, but either way, that's it's a lot of people, and yet it still feels as though, I don't know. It feels to me like it's kind of random, mainly because I don't win. So
yeah, I'm not winning either, but I'm trying. I'm trying hard. I think to get to the $1,000, you need this last week you needed more, but 200-ish points.
Yeah,
and you can see past to that. You hope you hit it once a year, maybe, right?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. You're not going to hit that every week, and I think people get really frustrated, and hence you get all the super smart think pieces that you read about DFS about how it's such a scam and such a rigged, and you've got a better chance of getting hit by lightning and all. Right? I mean, I guess that's right, but it's also you have to play it like you would play anything, which is not be a dilettante, not dabble once, not get frustrated after 2 weeks. Like right. The point is, if you're going to hit, you're going to hit once, and it's going to fund your whole season.
Yeah.
All right, so week 4. This is going to be interesting because there are just a lot fewer teams available if you play the regular contests that start on 1 o'clock Eastern on Sunday, right? You got Patriots and Titans off, and Patriots being off. It's almost like 2 teams being off.
Yep.
Ravens Steelers Thursday night. Jets Dolphins in London early Sunday morning. So those are out for the
Brandon Marshall's out.
Right.
He can't do his weird stuff to you. Give you points and
take them
lose
away.
Games.
Yeah. So that is good offenses and good players off the board. How do we change our approach in any of these things, including the GPP or the 50-50s?
One thing that it's going to happen more and more with the buys, obviously,
right.
that things are going to get really compressed in terms of who you can choose. But this week really feels bad because we lost some really good players as well outside of that. And I think with DraftKings, what's really going to happen with so many tickets is because their running backs their price doesn't catch up to the real world yet.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to pay for the wide receivers. Everybody's going to go cheap on running backs, and a lot of tickets are going to look awful lot alike.
And that's going to be borne out when we look at our respective starting tickets because we have 4 players in common, including both of our running backs, and we came up with these independent of one another. And I think that was a really interesting point. You're going to have a blog post up on harrisfootball.com, and because I run harrisfootball.com and I'm Harris, I got to see it beforehand. And you bring up the good point, which is, maybe just the actual personnel that's missing from these teams, not just the idea that there are 6 teams gone, but the personnel that's gone, right? So Antonio Brown is gone, and Brandon Marshall is gone, and it made it feel like there were only a few remaining super studs at wide receiver, right? And that was
like
why
7 or 8. I mean, it's like everybody's going to pick from these same guys.
A.J. Green, Julio Jones, Randall Cobb, they're going to be on a lot of tickets, and Larry Fitzgerald, and you don't really have the option of not doing that because if you're going to bet against all of those guys, you're probably going to be wrong, right? If you went contrary and you went stud running back, maybe 1 stud receiver, and then filled in with a bunch of value receivers, you're essentially making a bet against the Cobbs, the Fitzgeralds, the Greens, the Joneses, and that might not be a very good strategy the way the NFL is going right now.
They leave you behind. That's what happened to me last week.
Yeah.
They just left me behind. I picked the wrong guys, and whoosh.
So even though we can imagine that our tickets will wind up looking a lot like a lot of other people's tickets, we're not recommending you veer away from that strategy to really super differentiate yourself. This needs to come down to being like a 5 or 6 player week, right? Where you're differentiating yourself only on maybe 5 players from the.
You have the opportunity to differentiate yourself on the cheaper running backs. I got about 10 or 11 that I think people are going to take. From Karlos Williams, who's really cheap, all the way up to, say, Joseph Randle, somewhere between the 3,400 to 5,500 range.
Mm-hmm.
There's Carlos Hyde and Devontae Freeman and Frank Gore and Stewart and Matt Jones and Alfred Morris, Ryan Matthews, all sorts of players that people are going to pick. That's where the differentiation is going to be. And you also have if you play FanDuel as well. FanDuel is a lot more reactionary. Jeremy Hill's price has come way down in FanDuel where it hasn't in DraftKings.
Mm-hmm.
You can go a different strategy in FanDuel a little bit easier. If you want to zig, that might be a better place.
So maybe zigging towards some of those struggling running backs, the Jeremy Hills, the DeMarco Murrays if he plays, the C.J. Andersons, those guys' prices are already coming down, whereas they haven't so much on DraftKings.
Right. And the guys that, like Devontae Freeman's going up.
Yeah.
So it's not as attractive on FanDuel to be a prisoner of the moment.
Right. Well, you are nothing if not a prisoner of the moment.
I am. I'm a total prisoner of the moment.
you and cousin Josh, prisoners of the moment. That's why I'm here, to counterbalance.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
You bring wisdom. You're like that turtle in Kung Fu Panda.
All right, that's a song. Somebody listening, that's a song. Can somebody please get on that? Comparing me to the turtle in Kung Fu Panda, that's a song.
He was really wise.
Yeah, I'm not saying it. I'm just saying I want a song. All right, so like I said, I've got your baseline team here, and let's ask you about some of these players. I'm going to start with the receivers because what stands out is you have 4 of them. You have 3, and then 1 at the flex, and they are literally 4 of the 7 or 8 that you just mentioned. Right. You have A.J. Green, Randall Cobb, Larry Fitzgerald, and Amari Cooper. And right. Cooper and Fitzgerald are like a notch below in terms of value on DraftKings than Green and Cobb. I don't think Green and Cobb need a lot of explanation. Yeah. Frankly, I'm not sure if Fitzgerald or Cooper need a lot of explanation.
I mean, Fitzgerald has been as good as anyone.
Right. So tell me how Julio Jones didn't make it on your card, because he did make it on mine.
It's just price.
Yeah,
that's all it is. I can't afford 4. I mean, when we see your card, you're going to see what you did. You made an alternative decision there.
Yeah,
such that you could get Julio.
Right.
I wanted the 4 instead of 3. I didn't like any of the cheap ones, though. I think the one you picked is a very good option this week. And Julio is just so expensive.
Yeah, he's a couple thousand on DraftKings. He's a couple thousand more dollars than even A.J. Green, right? He's in the 9s. Right. Yeah.
I mean, I could go Karlos Williams and Ryan Matthews. Go with the really, really cheap backs.
Right.
And get Julio. I'm worried too many people are going to do that, and I'm not sure I'm with that right yet.
Well,
especially Matthews.
So from a football perspective, it did make me wonder because of matchups, right? So we've got Julio going against Houston. Houston hasn't shown to be a great defense yet, but I think we expect that there is a game coming where their pass rush will start to show its head.
Yeah.
Essentially, maybe what it comes down to for you is, even though Julio has been better than every other receiver in the league so far this year, maybe because of this matchup and because of the matchups of the other potential stud receivers, maybe you just view Julio kind of at the same level as.
Right. I do think that. I think they're pretty even. I mean, Julio's best is better than probably everybody else's best, but these guys are still scoring. Fitzgerald especially. I mean, they're just scoring ridiculous amounts. So I'm not willing to pay the price. I'm cheap, and it hurts sometimes.
Well, I mean, what it comes down to is if your evaluation on players is that they're about the same and one is $1,500 cheaper than the other, the decision is sort of made for you. But it's nothing in particular about the Texans.
No.
Okay. All right.
It's just the dollars.
All right.
I didn't want to take the bargain basement running backs. I just didn't want to do it.
All right, so then let's get to your non-stud receiver guys, and we'll talk a little football about how they fit in, to your feelings about Week 4. Your quarterback is going to wind up being Andy Dalton.
Yeah.
The Bengals, felt like they had a tough matchup last week against the Ravens, and yeah. Dalton was basically terrible for 3 quarters. He wasn't terrible, but he wasn't doing much for 3 quarters. He had a terrible fumble, but then at the very end there, he sort of saved his week. After the fumble, he sort of saved his week. So tell me about Dalton this week.
Well, Kansas City hasn't impressed, and they're on the road, and I think they're demoralized. So,
well, demoralized. Don't get me demoralized now.
I do it.
You listen to the podcast. We can't.
I know what you mean,
demoralized.
but I'm just
demoralized
stuck
isn't.
in my head.
Yeah, it's not a thing. But what is a thing is that they lost one of their corners already just to a torn ACL against the Packers. Marcus Cooper got picked on like crazy. Rodgers just went after him again and again and again. You hardly heard Marcus Peters' name, and he's the rookie corner who looks fantastic for the Chiefs, but they just never threw at him. And if you can have a night like Rodgers had and never throw to one side, you know that tape made its way to the Bengals, and that's Andy Dalton's feeling. So I didn't pick Dalton for my team, but it literally it's a fine pick, and it was $100 away from me being able to afford him, so I went with someone else instead. But
I think the quarterbacks that look most attractive to me are in that sort of price range. Phillip Rivers as well. I like him a lot. I have him on a different ticket. Your guy I like too. I have him on a different ticket. And Cam Newton. Just sort of the second tier to third tier quarterbacks seem just as attractive to me as the top tier ones.
Yep. And so, I mean, Rivers hasn't played great this year, but the Browns are an elixir, it seems. And speaking of
San Diego played really well.
Speaking of which, Melvin Gordon is on both of our teams.
Mm-hmm.
I have him, I think, 12th among running backs in standard leagues in commissioner style this week. I am buying what he's selling. The Danny Woodhead love seems to have gone away a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Have you agreed with me from what you've seen highlight-wise of Melvin Gordon?
Yeah, he seems to be improving every week. I went with him last week, so I'm a sucker for taking him again. But
which is what you've seen. Like, I know you don't get to see every single snap, but are you with me that we haven't seen statistical results that are in alignment with what you actually see when he runs?
Yes. He's sort of like the John Brown running backs.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, John Brown, you feel like also we haven't seen the best.
I mean, we've seen so many opportunities for like Brown to get touchdowns, and they just never happen, whether a penalty or he drops it or he gets tackled at the 2. Or
pass interference. A lot of pass interference. I'm with you, and on Melvin Gordon, the reason he's on my team also is that the Browns are not good stopping the run for the 11 millionth straight year. I'm feeling like we're reaching the point where we can look at the sample size of 3 games and see a few consistent patterns across defenses. And I mean, Latavius Murray. Listen, Latavius Murray wasn't amazing on every single carry last week, but there were a few carries where you were like, okay, guys, you should probably at least be in his way, and that one carry up the right side of the field was crazy. There was Marcel Reese had a long gain, and he was tackled twice, and the Browns were just like, yeah, no, you go ahead.
I don't want this.
Yeah. So I'm with you on Melvin Gordon. We both wound up with Karlos Williams. I feel like, he's being overhyped.
Mm-hmm,
people are asking me, I've already talked on the show about like these flex questions that people are asking on Williams, and for this week it's probably fine, but people are talking about, dropping Jeremy Hill for Karlos Williams. It's like, LaShawn McCoy is going to be back, like calm down a little bit, but the value on DraftKings is $3,400. It's way
right. It's almost impossible not to take.
Right, and he's going to be on so many teams, you don't want to bet against him. So you had Tyler Eifert at your tight end, and of course the Dez Bryant rule is what nipped Tyler Eifert this past week. He would have had a touchdown, but it was taken away on a 4th down, no less, on an incomplete pass where he scored, but he didn't score.
Yeah, alternate universe, he got points.
So you feel the Dalton to Eifert connection is the one to invest in there?
This was my last pick. This is the one I'm a prisoner of the moment. I want Olsen. I can't afford him. But so I had Clay here too. But I ended up, I have Dalton. I have Green. I'm like,
right, yeah.
Right. I'm like, let me just take Eifert. I've got the money for him.
So
this will be a little bit of a zig pick. I don't think he'll have nearly the percent ownership of some of the other people will. He'll hit like 8% or something like that. I mean, he's a single position, so they hit lower numbers obviously than running back or wide receiver.
Right. It's a Bengals stack, and we just talked about what that Chiefs secondary has looked like. It is an all-world pass rush. It is a great pass rush, and I think, Aaron Rodgers is almost never going to got by that pass rush, right? So Justin Houston's just almost never, is just going to get frustrated and go offside and all that stuff. Tom Bailey, but against a team like Cincinnati, I do think there's a potential for that pass rush to wreck Andy Dalton a little bit, because Dalton is I don't think he's very good, and he can be rattled, and there's a potential for it to go south, but maybe that gets baked into their prices where maybe not as many folks feel comfortable grabbing them, thinking, okay, Chiefs desperate, blah, 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 that whole narrative stuff. So I don't think a Bengals stack is a terrible idea, knowing what I know about the personnel on the back end. Okay,
well, that's good. I won't have to switch.
All right, I'll talk about
I've entered this one in your contest, so.
All right. It's I mean, we have some overlap. So I think we have 4 guys in common on our tickets in the Harris Football fans room. I have Melvin Gordon, Karlos Williams is my backfield. I have Randall Cobb and A.J. Green as well. So we're going to differentiate ourselves on the other 5, and I have Tyrod Taylor at quarterback instead of Andy Dalton. I have Dalton ranked higher, so I would have preferred Dalton actually myself, but I kind of have talked myself into the idea, I'll take A.J. Green and his big play, but maybe I don't need Dalton against that pass rush, and I'll take Taylor.
I love Taylor too.
Yeah. I have Julio, so I spent for him, but you're going to see why, because at tight end and flex, instead of Eifert and Amari Cooper, I have Eric Ebron, who I've had maybe all 3 weeks, and Stevie Johnson, who I've definitely had all 3 weeks.
Yeah. Stevie Johnson is probably a pretty good choice for a cheap receiver this week, better than the last few weeks, I think, even. I just like the similarities to week 1. I mean, obviously, that's game flow stuff, and that's a no-no.
No, but, no. I think where their similarity is, is Joe Hayden healthy for Cleveland? I think the answer is pretty clearly not. And if we're going to get corner play in week 4 like we did in week 1, it's totally analogous. I mean, the reason Keenan Allen went so crazy and Stevie Johnson to some degree in week 1 was in large part Rasheed Mathis couldn't cover anybody, and the Lions aren't very good in the back end. And if Joe Hayden isn't healthy, I don't think the Browns are very good in the back end either.
Yeah.
So Stevie makes it in there, but if I had a choice between Stevie and Cooper, I'd take Cooper. I just didn't have that choice. And then for defense, instead of Arizona, which you wound up with, I wound up with Seattle on Monday night against Detroit. They did me fine. They did you fine last week. Talk to me about why the Cardinals defense is your number 1 defense for the week.
I mean, obviously, prisoner of the moment again. You just see what they did to San Francisco, but they're at home. They're playing another bad quarterback. Yeah. And you can just see you're not going to get 2 pick sixes and 4 passes, but you can see them really, really putting a hurt on St. Louis. They put a hurt on everybody. I mean, they haven't played
anybody
a stud yet.
Yeah.
They've put a hurt on every bad player they've played. So.
And Nick Foles is a bad player, and I think it's worth mentioning that St. Louis, after kind of a big emotional, pretty decent offensive day in week 1, has been pretty much garbage on offense for 2 straight weeks. And is anybody thinking that Steeler defense is great? And they made Nick Foles look just terrible last week.
Yeah.
Another case where very suspect Rams offensive line, and I'm with you. I think Arizona's defense is a really good bet this week. But I'll take Seattle's. I had a choice in that spot, and I just went with the return of Cam Chancellor and the personnel looking a lot more organized.
And people are going to take Seattle a little bit less than they're going to take Arizona.
Right. That's right. I mean, that's partly because people are still living in the past about that Lions offense. Mm-hmm. That Lions offense just is not the same. So I wonder, if you look at the 5 players that we're different on, what's going to be the key factor that's going to cause my team to beat your team this week, I wonder.
No factor. No factor.
Julio's probably going to outscore your other 5 guys combined.
Julio, yeah, because Tyler Eifert's going to get zeroed again, and I don't know. I mean, you can see the narrative where Kansas City puts a hurting on my guys. And,
right. I mean, if
you just get better average points from your
right.
Tyrod Taylor's going to score. I mean, he's going to get points.
Right. So
There's no doubt about it.
That's a great point. I mean, to some degree, I think when you start assembling tickets, we have different goals. I'm going to play probably 1 ticket, maybe 2 tickets, and I'm not playing the GPP. It's just not my thing. It's not my style. And you are always going to try to put together some tickets for the GPP. And clearly, a stacked Bengals lineup is one that's probably better primed to have a higher upside than the team I've put together. Because if Dalton goes bananas again and Eifert and Green benefit, then that's the kind of ticket that's going to rise up the ranks in the GPP because it's going to be pretty differentiated, right? Whereas I might have a safer baseline, and so fine, I'm teasing you, but that might be why I'm doing a little better on the 50-50s. But I think it's pretty clear you would have more tickets that would have higher upside than I would if we were both playing GPP.
Yeah, I gamble. I gamble a little bit.
But that's how you win in the GPP, right? And I just choose not to play. I sit out.
I don't gamble at all.
I have my arms folded.
So I have a question for you, though.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about my FanDuel tickets, and the running backs are different.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about Jeremy Hill, a zig right there. C.J. Anderson, I thought about and discarded. But backs that might be a little higher dollar on DraftKings that aren't on FanDuel. Do you have anybody you like?
Well, give me names.
Well, Jeremy Hill for one this week.
Probably not. I probably don't think this is a bust out week for him. That's a half PPR, and I don't do half PPR ranks. But if I did, he and Gio Bernard would probably be about tied in my ranks. I feel like I kind of want to see the workload tilt back in Hill's favor before I really buy in. I mean, I think Hill might have been I think Hill was on the field for fewer than 20 snaps last week. That's crazy.
Wow. How about somebody like? Well, I already mentioned C.J. Anderson. I didn't like him. Eddie Lacy.
Yeah, I mean, I assume he's a little more expensive, but yes, I'm certainly all aboard on Eddie Lacy. The 49ers look every bit as bad as we thought they were going to look before week one when they, had an emotional something weird happen. I think Lacy's healthy and in for something big, so I would pick him for sure over Hill.
And Jonathan Stewart. That's the one I'm thinking about a Panther stack.
Sure. I mean, again, I think Stewart's more of a GPP type play. I think someone like Doug Martin's more of a GPP type play. A differentiated pick when a lot of your other picks are going to overlap. And, of course, we've seen so far this year they haven't done a lot, and so they've kind of doomed you. But if and when they hit, I think both of those guys have a ton of talent and on tape have looked fine. Just need to find the right situation. Stewart's issue is going to be touchdowns. There are going to be too many weeks where they get taken away, but I think he's going to score 6 or 7 at some point this year if he stays healthy. And if that, 2 of those happen this week, you're going to be put in pretty good stead.
Yeah, he's a real consideration. Now I have to take Hill out.
Well, what am I going to do? Now everybody else should put Hill in because clearly that has now been bad advice. All right, Craig. Well, this has been very useful for me. I hope useful for all the DFS players out there. Thank you very much. Follow Craig on Twitter at PCClark59. I know you get back to the folks when you can, and that's much appreciated. And you always tell me constantly, every day, how unbelievably flattered you are by the incredible attention that you're being paid by the Harris Football listeners.
Yes, I'm terrified.
And by flattered, I meant terrified. Hey, thanks for doing it, Craig.
Yeah, this has been a blast, and I enjoy coming on your show, and I'm amazed at how much fun it's become.
That's our show. Thank you very much for listening. And remember, Thursday night, 1 hour before kickoff, you can ask me your lineup questions live via streaming video. Go to harrisfootball.com/videos for details. It'll be fun. You'll be able to play in the DraftKings contest for Harris football fans that Craig and I were just talking about. Plus, there's trivia. There's prizes. Enjoy the game tonight, my friends. Thank you very much again, and I will talk to you tomorrow.
The Harris Football Podcast's opening theme is Under the Gun by Apex Manor. The end theme is Tooth and Claw by OU Villain. Subscribe to the Harris Football Podcast on iTunes and never miss an episode.